So we've covered the UAE, and now it's time to bring things a little bit closer to home. So I'm going to welcome to the stage now, we have Congressman and US Representative Tom Emmer, who will be joining the stage. An absolute pleasure. Let's have a round of applause for Congressman Tom Emmer. Hi, welcome to the stage. Please take a seat. So we'll be discussing regulation, and to moderate this, we have Crowded Media's Andrew Dix. Andrew, I'll give the microphone.
Awesome. Thank you very much, Jessica. I got two microphones. Hello. So, first of all, I want to let you know who I am. Andrew Dix. I am the founder and CEO of the Crowded Media Group, and we are the publisher of Crowdfund Insider. We cover the full stack of fintech, including crypto, blockchain, online capital formation, all this cool stuff that's happening to financial services today. We also are heavy on regulatory and legislative issues because it's something that I truly love and enjoy. And we're really fortunate today to have somebody here who is really helping you guys in the industry today. We have Congressman Tom Emmer. He joined the House in 2015.
Seems like 100 years ago.
Seems like 100 years ago. I understand that. You're from the 6th District in Minnesota. You almost immediately established yourself as a leader in fintech innovation, which I think is really cool and amazing. And I want to list some of the things you're doing right now. He's on the House Committee for Financial Services. He's the ranking member on the FinTech Task Force. He is also a member of the Subcommittee on Investor Protection, Entrepreneurship, and Capital Markets, and Subcommittee on the National Security, International Development, and Monetary Policy. You are a co-chair of the House Blockchain Caucus. Obviously, this is a person you need to know. I could go on. I could go on and on.
You don't have to, though.
Yeah. So we have a very modest representative here, obviously, today. I would say this, almost immediately from the time Congressman Emmer took his seat in the House, he was a leader in crafting legislation for fintech innovation and blockchain. And I have to ask you this, where did this interest stem from? Because, you know, I follow the House and the Senate quite a bit, and many members, they take, you know, years to figure out who they are. And in my opinion, sometimes some of them never figure out who they are. But you immediately establish yourself as a leader. Where does this come from?
Well, first off, Andrew, it's great to see you in person. We've done this remotely over the last couple of years. I want to thank Onera and for sponsoring this great summit. The question's a good one. You don't see a lot of people that look like me that go to Congress and get involved with blockchain technology, crypto. So two things have happened. One, I came to Congress with more of a libertarian bent. I like to be in control of my own decision making rather than turning it over to somebody else. Two, I raised a whole bunch of kids who think a lot differently than I do. I mean, it's amazing to me that I grew up in a world where we punch buttons in the car to pick out whatever radio station we want to listen to. You had paper in your hands, whether you're reading a newspaper or a book. You were very limited. Today, where I was growing up in a two-dimensional world, my kids are growing up in a three-dimensional world and beyond, and they do things that I don't. So that came with me, and then I had a great staffer, Andrew. Kid from Minnesota who drove me around when I was campaigning for Congress. I get to Congress, and he handles my financial services portfolio, and he came in one day early, and he said, "What do you know about blockchain and crypto?" Nothing. He handed me a book called The Age of Cryptocurrency. That's what started it 7.5 years ago, 7 years ago, whatever it was. I read that book. Two things. I went to Landon. I told him, remember, I'm a member of Congress. I need books with more pictures. That part aside, I need more on this. And it's the promise, Andrew. It's not just about crypto and blockchain. For me, it's much bigger than that. It's moving into Web3 or the ownership economy. It's you and I literally changing the dynamic out there, that we don't necessarily need intermediaries in the future. We can do our business directly with one another, and I don't have to necessarily have a strong central authority that limits or permits me to make my own decisions.
Okay, so I like this. And you're actually being very modest, because I went back to look at the legislation he's actually sponsored and co-sponsored, and the list is very long. I'm just going to mention a couple of them very, very quickly. There's the Blockchain Regulatory Certainty Act. There's the Securities Clarity Act, the Safe Harbor for Taxpayers with Forked Assets Act, the Digital Commodity Exchange Act, Virtual Currency Tax Fairness Act, Keep Innovation in America Act, and I stopped there, right? I mean, you know, I could probably go on. There's probably a few that I'm missing.
Outlawing CBDCs.
Yeah, and I want to point out that most of the legislation that you've been creating or co-sponsoring, it's been bipartisan. In a fractious Congress, in a very challenging legislative environment, we have somebody on Capitol Hill who is able and willing to work across the aisle to create legislation that's beneficial to this industry. So where do these bills stand right now? Are we seeing any progress on any of these?
Well, first off, the ones that you've listed out, this is not the first Congress that I've offered them. I do this on a regular basis, and we try to expand it. But I want to back up a little bit, because when I first got involved in this, I want this innovation to take place here. I mean, I'm really happy with everyone around the world, how they're creating different environments that allow these financial innovations to grow and to prosper. But we really need to have some more clarity and certainty here in the United States of America. So I started out 7 years ago asking, you know, this was the Obama administration, asking, we need some more definition on what exactly is a currency, what exactly is a commodity, what exactly is a security. Because we want people who are out here in innovating, we want them to understand what the rules are that they have to comply with. Well, boy, you can see how well I've done with that. I mean, we went into the Trump administration where we had some good friends. And I'm going to tell you, some of the great people we worked with, Chris Giancarlo, Hester Peirce, Brian Brooks, and there are others. But we didn't have all of them. We had a Treasury Secretary that was not a big friend. The SEC was tentative, I would say, at best. We moved into this new administration, and the hope was that they would be more forward-thinking, that they would in these areas where we had run into some, I would say, myopic thinking, they would look farther down the road. We didn't get that. I mean, we got people like Gary Gensler, who literally is working against his own mission statement every single day. So here, going back to the beginning, and then I'll answer both questions. To me, I would ask everybody in the room, I assume we have Republicans, Democrats, progressives, other, you know, every shade and persuasion of political perspective in this room. Please, and this is just one person's opinion, but this is not bipartisan. When you say bipartisan, I've been doing this for 20 years, you sit in front of a room and you say bipartisan, you've already divided that room. This is a nonpartisan issue. We're talking about people's ability to raise capital. We're talking about people's ability to transact business with one another. The technology that you are involved with, the opportunities that you're creating, have nothing to do with being one political persuasion or another. So I would suggest, just again, a friendly suggestion from somebody who's been doing this for a while, this is a nonpartisan issue, when we cannot allow it to become partisan at all. So if we've got a certain senator from Massachusetts who wants to make it partisan, we've got to ignore that. We've got to keep pressing ahead with the people that are out here that understand this is not about being a Democrat or a Republican or anything else. And with these bills, Andrew, you have a growing movement in Congress. You know, when I read that book 7 years ago, Landon, my staffer, said, if you're not the most, up to speed on crypto in Congress, the member who's the most up to speed, you're definitely in top 4 or 5. And I thought, that's not good. That's not good. And we got, you know, you had always nonpartisan, right? You had Mick Mulvaney and you had Jared Polis, who are the two original founding members of the Blockchain Caucus. Now, could you think of 2 people that are any more different than those 2 people? Again, this is nonpartisan, but it wasn't growing. We were trying to grow it through education on the House side with staff members. As the young blood comes in, because they all want to learn what Washington is like, they bring these new ideas. They bring this 3-dimensional and beyond abstract thinking with them. But you got to get it to the members. And what happened last August, if people in the room are aware of it, there was a bipartisan infrastructure bill that came out of the Senate, and they put a tax provision in it because, you know, God forbid that all of you that are creating these great opportunities and generating all kinds of revenue, God forbid that you won't pay the VIG to your government, right? So they wanted to they did put a tax provision that is very poorly worded. You can interpret it any way you want. You could bring in software.
It was a disaster.
It is a disaster because it became law.
Right, it became law.
But what was really interesting is we probably got 10 years of education in 3 months. The Senate, where you've got, they call it the senior citizens home, the nursing home. The Senate, which you had Cynthia Lummis and maybe a couple others that were kind of nibbling around the edges. Cynthia was a champion, but the other ones kind of learning a little bit, taking their time. All of a sudden, I'm told that they were getting on average 30,000 contacts a day. Emails, phone calls, people stopping by their office to tell them how misguided this tax was and why it's the wrong thing to do. It woke a bunch of them up. They literally had to learn what you are all about and why this is so important. And now you've seen others. I use one name and I'll stop. Ted Cruz, who I hadn't been working with at all before this. Ted Cruz, I haven't even talked to him about it directly. I think he learned it as fast or faster than anybody because he went home and he realized that Texas is like ground zero for mining and other things. Yeah. And he realized this time has come and you got to get involved. So the Blockchain Caucus has now grown to over 40 members. It more than doubled in size, and it's growing every day. So the awareness is going up. So now, the bills that you're talking about, they actually, I don't think you're going to see any of them become law in this Congress. If we see any action before the end of the year, it might be in the stablecoin arena, which we've got to be very careful with because it'll be about reserves, right? But the next Congress, assuming what we expect is coming in the fall, there's a change in leadership. I think you're going to see a whole bunch of this stuff get moved for sure in the House.
Okay, so there's 2 things I want to respond to you quickly since you introduced this. How do you convince a Brad Sherman that this is actually a positive thing instead of, you know, satanic? I mean,
well, I've got him on my side too. I mean, you're picking Brad Sherman, a Democrat from California, who it's very clear to me that he refuses to open his mind to what the possibilities are, or that maybe good people are involved in this. He's still stuck on Silk Road and all this other stuff. I think it's better off that once you identify a Brad Sherman, and I won't use the names on my side, but again, these are Republicans and Democrats. Right. Once you identify them, you work around them. I mean, we had a crypto hearing in the House, first one. Our chairwoman doesn't do a bunch of these, but we had the first one in December. An amazing thing happened. You had Republicans and Democrats, which, by the way, one under Jeb Hensarling about 6-7 years ago. I heard Republicans and Democrats all talking the same way, and they were talking like Brad Sherman. Fast forward to this past December, we had Republicans and Democrats both complaining about Gary Gensler at the SEC. And I mean, you can see what's happening. Yeah. So as this grows on the Democrat side, and I'm happy to call out names and give them compliments, but that will that should mute the ignorant comments of another member that just refuses to learn this stuff.
Okay, and I'm going to come back to Gensler a little bit because I'm interested in that subject too. So we're talking about, you know, the status of regulation. I want to bring up the executive order that was recently signed by the president, by the White House, And many people in the industry looked at this and it was kind of, they issued a sigh of relief because it could have been very draconian, very critical of the industry and what's happening in the innovation. While it emphasized investor protection and consumer protection, it also said we need to lead in innovation. Now, actions always speak louder than words, and who knows where this is, I don't know where this is going to go. Maybe you have an idea where this is going to go. What are your thoughts on the executive order that came out of the White House?
Well, first, I think I'm going to be like most of the people in the room. Let's forget the substance of it for a second. But when President Biden issued that executive order for the working group to start coordinating all the different agencies, thank God. It's about time. Now, the details, not as big a fan, but we don't have to agree on everything, right? The concept of getting all of these agencies to actually start talking about how they might function together is a good thing. I also love, and forgive me, this is a little chip on my shoulder, maybe as an old hockey player taking a shot as I go by, but Gary Gensler was excluded, as you might recall, in the order. They did not give him any job at all. Unfortunately, he's shown he doesn't care. He's just moving forward without any concept of working together with the administration. I don't know if you noticed, he just doubled the size of his cyber unit, and he's going to use them. I think he added 20, so almost doubled it. He's up to 50 enforcement
50,
folks.
That's correct.
And you better expect they're going to start coming after crypto folks in the very near future. But
so you're saying that Gensler is not on that working group, that interagency working group?
The working group did not assign any specific obligation or duty to the SEC.
Okay.
I will tell you, there's another thing I'm concerned about in the working group. It also directs the financial, the services, the FSOC, whatever the letters stand for. Again, it'll come back to me. But the FSOC was created under Dodd-Frank.
Right.
Okay. And remember, the idea of the FSOC is it's not beholden to anybody. I mean, for goodness sakes, I don't like it because I think it should be under the supervision and direction of Congress. But we don't even do that. We don't even oversee their budget. The problem with the order is it directed FSOC to actually do some things if we don't. So it literally is, it looks like it's going to politicize one of these units that's not supposed to be Republican or Democrat. It's supposed to be looking for all of us. So that's a concern to me. But again, the concept that the president stood up and said, we got to get all of our people working together to look at how we can allow this innovation to actually exist, not just exist in this country, but to thrive. I think that's a good thing.
Yeah, I was actually encouraged by it. You know, hope springs eternal, but it could have been a lot worse. And I think for anybody that actually read the fact sheet, it wasn't as bad as it could have been. Now, so you mentioned Gensler. You actually tweeted out you did a tweet thread immediately after it came out, which I thought was very insightful, is interesting. But then it was soon followed by a tweet by Gary Gensler, and he said he was very interested in focusing on protecting investors and consumers, guarding against illicit activity, and helping ensure financial stability. Zero on innovation, nothing, which he should be focused on as well, in my opinion. A previous panel asked if Gary Gensler was Obi-Wan Kenobi or Darth Vader. Should we include Sith Lord on that list? I mean, what do you think about Gensler?
I think you're giving him too much credit. Look, I know you're supposed to, in my line of work, you're always supposed to say, my very, very good friend. I really appreciate my very, very good friend from whatever or bless her heart, whatever it is they say down south. Gary Gensler is not doing his job. And I mean, if other members of Congress want to do the platitudes and have the happy, sweet talk back and forth, they can. I think we got to keep calling out bureaucrats, and I don't care who appointed them. But when a bureaucrat literally takes it upon him or herself to take an agency in a direction that is destructive, he's not in favor of innovation. Tell me where he's actually allowed innovation to occur. He says all the right things. Oh, if you have an opportunity, come on into the SEC. Sit down with us. We're happy to talk to you about your idea. Anybody in the room who's tried to do that? You'll be the first one if you tell me that it went really well and we got what we were looking for. We got the clarity we were looking for. You got it? You and I need to talk before we're done because I want to know. But I've been very frustrated. I'm going to tell you what he's been doing with his enforcement actions and his public statements are not helpful at all. And recently, to show you that this is not a partisan issue, again, there were 4 Democrats and 4 Republicans on a letter that I led asking him 13 specific questions. And maybe it's just his, he doesn't feel like he's under our supervision. He feels like he's the king of his domain, so he doesn't have to respond. But he finally responded last week. He didn't answer one of the questions. And yet he turned a reporter on us. I'm told that he has nicknamed us the Blockchain 8. And he turned a reporter on us to write some kind of an op-ed that we are dangerously wading into an area of potential investigation. What investigation? I mean, I'm going to tell you, his agency has been sending letters to people in this space suggesting, they're asking for information and suggesting it's voluntary, but the word I've been getting back is it doesn't feel like it's voluntary. It feels like his agency is strong-arming and that they have some agenda that they're trying to accomplish. But again, before I leave, I would love to know what your story is, because it'll be the only one I've heard so far.
Yeah, so first of all, I want to point out the fact that they sent a letter to the chairman of the SEC that was signed by both Republicans and Democrats. That does not happen that often. It's not a thing. It's more of a rarity, at least in my experience. You can correct me if I'm wrong.
Well, Andrew, it is, especially when it's critical. You know, we both are frustrated, Republicans and Democrats alike. That's why we're sending the letter. You're not giving us the information we're asking for. And this is a Democratic administration. For goodness sakes, you'd think they could get the information they're asking for.
Yeah. Hope, once again, hope springs eternal. So you mentioned already that they doubled the staff of the cyber
Yeah, it's
unit.
gone from 30 to 50.
It's 50, and they changed the name. They relabeled it from cyber unit to crypto assets and cyber unit. And did they cancel the innovation arm that was there under Clayton? I haven't seen anything about that.
See, the innovation arm, and I think I know what you're talking about, because there were some really good people in this group that we met with probably 3-4 years ago. But you'll remember, Andrew, I think they were doing good work, and their mission was actually pure. It was right. But they never got to the top of the pile in terms of what the solutions were that they were working on or how we might address some of this stuff. Whether they still exist, we haven't been in contact with them recently. So, I mean, remember, once Jay Clayton leaves and Gary Gensler comes in, it's Chair Gensler's organization.
Yeah, it's a flood. It's a flood of changes. So, when I see that they've almost doubled the staff of this new portion of enforcement, and the enforcement division is the largest division within the SEC. It gets the bulk of the funding, the bulk of the staff. That's their big thing. I do interpret that as we're going to see many more enforcement actions. And I wonder what your thoughts are, since we're talking about this, that Gensler has consistently mentioned crypto asset exchanges that are not providing the level of investor protection that they should. I take that as they're looking at the Binances of the world and some of these exchanges that are regulated under state law as opposed to federal law. Am I wrong?
Well, I want to be careful not to step into areas where we identify what we think, because if I do that, then I'm doing exactly what I'm complaining that they're doing, right? With public statements. But I would say this. I think we should all remember that the Securities Exchange Commission is a regulatory agency with an enforcement arm. It's not an enforcement agency. That's not the point. And the mission of the SEC is to protect every investor, not just investors with assets. Every potential investor, American that wants to get involved in the greatest markets on the face of the planet, should have that opportunity. And probably the fastest growing, the least or the most efficient with the least amount of friction for people to get into the marketplace in the last few years is right here. And yet everything he's doing And he does it under the guise of enforcement and investor protection. But I mean, we ran through this with him at a hearing about 2 months ago. In fact, what he's doing is just the opposite of his mission.
Yes, I would agree with that. I want to jump over to a different topic that one was discussed earlier today. Obviously, there's been a lot of chatter in regards to UST and Luna and these algorithmic stablecoins that have fallen apart. The wheels have fallen off. But it's also brought broader attention to stablecoins that are tied to fiat. So personally, I look at an algo stablecoin and look at a fiat-based stablecoin. They're two very different things. You look at USDC, and they've been very transparent about the assets they hold in reserve. They're pursuing a bank charter. They want regulation. They're begging for regulation. You look at Tether. Well, I mean, you know, Tether at one point in time had some issues, but they've been trying to you know, bring themselves back into the good graces of compliance, and they now periodically show that they actually have the dollars and the T-bills to back it up. What are your thoughts on this whole, you know, train crash of UST and Luna? What has that done?
Well, this is the one area that I do think if you see something substantive happen in the next 8 months, this is where it will be, and it will be with reserves. But first off, let's go back to the beginning about how I got involved, and let's talk very quickly about our Treasury Secretary, Janet Yellen, who I think is incredibly gifted and very smart. I've been around her quite a bit, but under the old regime, under the existing two-tier banking system that we all grew up with, she's one of the best out there on what we're talking about. And yet, when algorithmic stablecoins were brought up the other day, she clearly has no concept of what these are. I shouldn't say that. That's a little bit too strong. She has a concept, but she does not know how they fit into the world as she knows it, right? That was my take from her testimony at the Senate Banking Committee. That being said, on the House side, I think we got to be very careful with this. What happened with this stablecoin we're talking about, with Luna and the whole experience, the problem with that is you're going to have potentially legislators at the federal level who now come rushing in to try and protect people from their ability to take their own risk. That never ends well. Every time you have, especially legislators who are not familiar with what we're talking about, it's really going to be a discussion over the next few months about the term high-quality liquid assets. What qualifies as high-quality liquid assets? And is it just fiat currency? I don't think so. And I think that's where we're going to have the debate. How do you make sure that if you're going to have reserves, you maintain you allow the environment to continue to innovate rather than locking? Well, I guess I shouldn't worry about it, because if we make a mistake with stablecoins, there's some pretty bright people in this room that'll invent something else and it'll take off in a different direction.
So that's interesting. So some time ago, I was talking to some of the guys at Circle, the creators of USDC, and the person I was speaking to, they kind of described it and said, look at it as a new type of payment rails where you remove the friction and the cost, so people can easily and quickly transfer value without getting nicked by 2, 3, 4, 5% or more, depending on how you do it.
Without the delay.
Yeah, without delay, immediately. And so to me, I'm like, okay, no brainer. That makes a lot of sense. Obviously, we need regulation, but that makes a lot of sense because of the value it creates for the world, right?
I wouldn't disagree with that, but maybe I'm going to get sideways a little bit, because I think we're talking about two different systems, right? We've got the financial technology that we're talking about that is literally trying to update into the 21st century the existing financial system. But then you also have something that's totally separate from it, which is an incredibly empowering tool that puts power back in the individual. To me, even though they're in the same area, they're two different things. I don't have a problem with what you just said in updating the existing, in essence, the existing financial system so that we can bring it into the 21st century and we can have real-time payments. We can have real-time settlements where you don't have to wait 3 days. You actually have this thing moving. You save cost, much more efficient. But I also don't want to lose the opportunity to have an ownership economy that I think we're going to get if this type of innovation is allowed to continue.
Okay, similar topic, CBDCs, central bank digital currencies. The Fed has been looking at this for a while now. They're working with MIT. Everybody knows that. There's at least a few countries that are testing live in the wild. The big one is China with their digital yuan that sprinkles a little bit of blockchain on it, but not really. What is your thoughts on the U.S. potential pursuit of a digital dollar?
Well, I would bring some poor Midwest humor to it, but I'll stay between the white.
Please do. I'm from.
Well, Nancy Reagan used to tell us just say no, so I just say no. But I'm not that foreclosed. I think we should always be willing to listen, always be willing to try to understand. If you can create a central bank digital currency that emulates cash and that it's open, it's permissionless, and that it's private, okay, I'm all ears. Nobody's shown me that they can do that yet. MIT has a proposal. It's a closed system. I don't want to lose the opportunity that we have. And by the way, a CBDC that is owned by your government, whether it's China or the U.S., is a surveillance tool. That's what it is. And it scares me to death that we would think about doing that in this country with our federal government, which is why I filed that bill, I don't know, what was it, Lizzie, about 3 months ago. We filed a bill that, no, we're not in favor of a central bank digital currency. And literally what you got is the central bankers all want to create this currency that they can superimpose on the existing two-tier banking system. That's what they're looking for. And they'll make an argument to you like some of my colleagues do that, oh, this will get more people into the banking system. I got news for you. The FDIC says one of the primary reasons that people do not bank is because they don't trust the existing system. How in God's name are you going to solve that problem by giving your government all your data? Oh, that's right. They're really good at protecting all our data. And I think back in the early 70s or whenever FISA courts were created, maybe a bad example for some of you, but I imagine that somebody that was advocating for FISA courts so that you would have a special court to go get a warrant to surveil foreign actors who you thought were up to no good here, and they weren't allowed to know that. I imagine the people that were advocating for that back in the 70s said, hey, and we promise it will never be used on American citizens. It just won't be used on American citizens.
Yeah, right.
And by the way, if you don't think this digital authoritarianism will ever be in the Western Hemisphere, somebody might want to take a look at what Mr. Trudeau just did to the truckers up in Ottawa. So I think it's really a bad idea that we do not want to emulate the Communist Party of China by creating a surveillance tool. That being said, again, if it's open, permissionless, and private, if it actually can emulate cash, I'm all ears.
I think there's few people in this room that would disagree with you. So very quickly.
Which is good. And I hope, by the way, I hope that those people that would disagree, I hope that we can have this ongoing discussion, because while I say to people all the time, I just think if everybody would agree with me, I think the world would be a lot better place. I know that's not the way it works. I'm just giving you my opinion. I'm always open to hearing somebody else's and learning something new.
Okay, so you brought up Secretary Yellen, and recently she was on the Hill testifying in front of the House and the Senate, and she did mention that she was very interested in working with Congress to create legislation to craft a regulatory regime around digital assets, crypto, the whole stack of things. Is she being sincere? Does she really want to do this?
I think Secretary Yellen is sincere. Okay. I don't know if she can accomplish what she wants to because of the the spectrum that she's got right now in the White House. You've got a bunch of the I'll call them the modern monetary theorists that
right.
They're not really fans of where we come from. They're to me the next generation of Keynesians who believe the government should collect the money and then spend it because that's what grows our economy. And I think the crypto world is more about empowerment of the individual and actually what's the reliable monetary policy. But I think Secretary Yellen is very sincere when she says that she'd like to do that. I've never seen her not be someone of her word.
Okay, so that's encouraging. So my last question to you is, and then maybe we can take one or two questions. I don't know if we have time or not, but
maybe from those people who disagree with you.
If there's anybody that disagrees with you. So my question is to you. So you're working with the executive, the bureaucracy, and the legislative. Where do we go from here? When do we make progress? Where do we see? Is there legislation that's going to emerge this year that's going to clarify some of these items and issues, like stablecoins? What's coming down the pike first?
Well, I think, again, I'll go back to it. We've got a whole bunch of things. The Securities Clarity Act, all these things that we put in would try to address the problems that we've seen, so we have light touch regulation on this area. Regulation. I mean, I'm in favor of sandboxes and safe harbors, right? I want to see people actually innovate and create and not be punished for it. If we learn something through the innovation and the creation, we can come back after that and figure out how you put rails on it and how you deal with it. But people should not be punished for innovating. And in fact, most people won't risk being punished. They just won't innovate here. They'll go somewhere else. So this is the discussion for the rest of the year. Stablecoins, I am worried, in light of what we just talked about, that you could see legislators rushing in to try and fix something without not having a good understanding of what it is they're trying to accomplish. And that's why we're going to need all of you. So where do you go from here? You are getting a bigger and bigger voice. And I've met enough in the industry that I've met people that I know they're very frustrated with government. Take a number, get in line. Everybody's very frustrated with government, but we have to work with it. And I think the example last summer in August that I gave in the Senate, the voice grew tremendously in a short few weeks. Now the key is, don't take your foot off the pedal. Make sure that people know what it is you're doing and why. You know, that's why I'm here, by the way. You heard me say, this is my opinion. I think we do a lot of work on it every day in the office, but we're not the one from above. We're just one of you trying to figure out how best can we make sure that this happens so that you stay here in the United States, so that people start coming back here, bringing their opportunities back here. Again, I think it's more a setup. You keep building your voice over the next 8 months. Barring some bizarre change, I think there will be a change in leadership in Washington, D.C., and change isn't bad, but this change, this time, at least at the House level, I would argue, because some of the work we've done over the last 7 years, I think you're going to have people that are more favorable towards moving this legislation. Now, you're going to have a President Biden in the White House. That doesn't mean that he's going to be favorable, but I leave that up to you. I mean, we got to make sure that his administration understands this is not about being Republican or Democrat. This is literally about making sure that this great opportunity stays right here in the United States and it grows the way it should. That's the biggest work over the next 6 to 8 months, again, with the caveat that stablecoins might be in somebody's crosshairs in the next 2 to 3 months.
Yeah, I absolutely agree with you. Spot on. So I don't know, Alon, if we have time for one or two questions. Yes, no? Yeah, does anybody in the audience have a question for the Congressman? We're lucky to have him here. He does need to rush back to Washington, D.C. for votes this afternoon. Is there anybody that has a question for him? There we go. Gentleman back there.
Well, look, I think you can become a prisoner of your own safety. And what did he say? I can't hear him.
He said, why not put the dollar on chain so we can all have access to it now?
I don't have a problem with that, but I don't, you're talking about something, I do not believe in a central bank digital currency in the way that you've described it, because I think the potential for abuse is much greater than the benefit that we are going to derive from it. And I think when you talk about all the opportunities that are being created outside of our federal government, I think that's the better future than following China, emulating what they're doing and potentially creating another opportunity for government to actually abuse its authority.
There could also be a two-tier system where the central banks use blockchain technology to transfer funds, while as private citizens, they maybe access privately issued stablecoins too. I mean, that could be a path as well.
I think stablecoins are, I really think that's where the answer lies. At least I did within the last few months. I'm a little concerned now because we were just talking about high-quality liquid assets 2-3 months ago. And I expected we were going to have time for more of a debate on that. Now I'm concerned with what just happened.
Well, that's why this doesn't make sense. If you have a government who, at least the federal government, is really good at handing out cash right now, and you had it on a digital asset basis, then most of this stuff we wouldn't have these type of issues, at least in theory and at least at this level, right? Because you do believe in sandboxes and you do believe that we should test stuff. This is a really great test.
Yeah,
let Treasury try it.
I believe in sandboxes for private citizens, not for our government to test its stuff on private citizens. We just fundamentally disagree.
Yeah.
I think there's a place for government, no question. I think our government has become way too large, way too powerful, and this tool...
But we can't teach them to fucking innovate, pardon the French, if they don't know how. If they don't learn it when I go to the SEC or the CFTC or FinCEN and tell them this is what a CBDC should be, they're going, what is that? We don't understand. How does a stablecoin work?
But you don't fix it then by empowering them more.
You do. You have to teach them.
We have to legislate. This is where the major failure has been for 20 years. Congress has not been doing its job. That presidential working group executive order, it literally tells FSOC to do what they want if we don't do what we want. That's why it scares me. We just fundamentally disagree. I think that my biggest issue as a policymaker, I want the world to move in the direction where we don't need intermediaries. Does that mean we will never have intermediaries? No, it doesn't.
No.
More importantly, this disruptive technology, we have to allow our existing financial system to evolve with it. They're two separate things. I don't think a CBDC, at least based on what I've seen right now, because it cannot emulate cash, I don't think the answer is to let our federal government do it. But again, it's worth the debate going forward.
We have a question right here. This gentleman right here.
Yeah, hi, Representative Emmer. Great comments. I agree 100%. So the Congress authorized $40 billion to get sent to Ukraine. Why don't you propose that we send it to them in Bitcoin so we know where the money goes?
I actually love that.
And then we can really figure out, right? I mean,
I actually love that. And obviously you know that the crypto community has helped Ukraine quite a bit already. That's a great idea. Unfortunately, in the House right now, we don't have the ability to amend these bills in that direction. But I think it's worth raising with my colleagues on the other side of the aisle, because I bet you a bunch of them would agree with it.
Any more questions from anybody? Oh, we have one right here, last one. Can somebody bring him the microphone? It's hard to hear. Here we go. We lost our microphone. Oh, okay, all right.
Just an observation on the previous discussion. In the case of the dollar, if you use a dollar anywhere in the world, you give the government, DOJ, jurisdiction. I know many cases because you're probably aware of the Mozambique case. It never happened in this country, but because they use the US dollar, DOJ could go after them, even Russia or England, whatever, in a US court. Now, if you let them use a digital currency, you give them jurisdiction on anybody having a digital asset, using a US digital asset. Same in the case of China with the yuan.
Are you trying to give me more comfort than I already have?
No, I'm just saying what the disadvantage.
No, I'm with you.
What the disadvantage is. You give them jurisdiction.
I got it.
Automatically.
All right. Awesome. So can we give a big round of applause to Congressman Tom Emmer for showing up and sharing what he has to say?
Thank you, Andrew. Thank all of you.
Thank you, everybody. Next up is Brooke Shields. So I'm very interested in that. Thank you.